Is May right to be salty about Salzburg? Don't mess with the single market, they said.
But leaders made it clear that access to the single market means acceptance of all 4 freedoms, including the freedom of movement. We will not sell off our freedoms, and there will be no single market à la carte.
But she didn't listen.
We are leaving the European Union, but we are not leaving Europe. And that is why we seek a new and equal partnership between an independent, self-governing global Britain and our friends and allies in the EU. Not partial membership of the European Union, associate membership of the European Union, or anything that leaves us half in, half out.
She tried to cherry-pick her way into it and was left fruitlessly embarrassed.
After 28 leaders posed for the group photo, nearly all of them went back to the meeting room for the next session. One leader said her goodbyes. Theresa May wasn't allowed back in for their next discussion about her Brexit plan. But she waited around, keen to make a last good impression on leaders before they returned to the table. There was an embrace for President Macron, the man Britain believes is leading the hardliners who won't soften the EU position. The kisses don't seem to have worked.
She believed in the arrogance of Brexit Britain, that Brexit Britain is special, and that those dreaded EU rules are for everyone else.
What I'm going to be setting out today is clearly how the United Kingdom proposes to protect the rights of EU citizens living in the UK and see the rights of UK citizens living in Europe protected.
But in the EU, everything comes at a price. She tried to tell countries like Cyprus, Germany and Ireland that carving up the UK would be a bad thing.
I've said consistently that there can never be a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. I said it in my letter triggering Article 50, in my speech at Mansion House and many times besides. During the referendum, both campaigns agreed that the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland must remain absolutely unchanged.
She didn't get organised on her Irish border proposals, saying they won't be ready until after October. She's been counterproductively trying to appeal to individual and sometimes unlikable European leaders like Poland and Hungary.
It's a full confidence anyway. She's a wonderful person and she's doing very well, representing toughly the interest of Great Britain. So I think it's a useful conversation and the negotiation is going well. And the Hungarian position is that what we need is a fair Brexit. So the precondition of that is given on the British side. So I hope we will use the possibility.
It's a Duff salesperson selling a Duff product.
2 years to get to this point. Have you finally reached a deal that keeps everyone in your cabinet on side and your Brexiteers at the cabinet table?
The EU have been consistent on their approach from the start, but the UK simply hasn't.
The unmistakable face of the Vote Leave campaign out on the road in Lancashire. We've joined him on the day when Vote Leave are pushing a plan to end free movement of migrants if Britain votes to leave the EU. So when I spoke to Boris Johnson, I asked him if he had a figure in mind for the number of migrants who would be welcome under the new regime.
Is 100,000 too many? That's what the Prime Minister has said.
That will depend on the state of the economic need or business needs.
So it could be more than 100,000 in principle.
Well, I think it's highly unlikely that it'll be more than that, but let's see what the needs of the UK
But it could be
are.
more.
Let's see what the needs of the UK
You're saying it would
are.
depend on the economy.
The most important thing is that politicians would be able to keep their promises.
Who said leaving would cause at least some business uncertainty while embroiling the government for several years in a fiddly process, negotiating new arrangements, so diverting energy from the real problems of this country? Who said that?
Let's be absolutely clear.
Who was it?
That it was me, and I concluded that article, as you well know.
2 weeks before you said you declared for out.
I concluded that article, as I think the text will bear out, by saying that we had nothing to fear from leaving, that we would prosper mightily outside, as indeed we will.
Yesterday, I was in Salzburg for talks with European leaders. I have always said that these negotiations would be tough, and they were always bound to be toughest in the final straight.
But she did make a defiant speech, securing her position as Prime Minister for the time being.
In plain English, this would mean we'd still have to abide by all the EU rules. Uncontrolled immigration from the EU would continue, and we couldn't do trade deals we want with other countries. That would make a mockery of the referendum we had 2 years ago.
And forcing the EU to step down its rhetoric.
Council President Donald Tusk said the UK had been surprisingly tough and uncompromising in Salzburg, but that, out of respect for the efforts of Prime Minister May, we will treat the Chequers plan as a step in the right direction. I remain convinced that a compromise good for all is still possible.
Of course, Brexiteers are now delighted. Chequers looks like it will be choked, and a no deal seems ever more likely. But will there be a lifeline in all of this? Well, it's unlikely that she'll get one from the UK, but she might just yet get one from the EU. But do you agree with me? Join in the debate below and subscribe.